It strikes me that some of the features we utilize in order to make a skirt adjustable should also be features that could potentially make a pair of trousers adjustable as well. Of course, the easiest of which would be the classic adding of a drawstring to the waistband. But what if we wanted to do something a little different? So, just for funsies, why don't we see if we can adapt a split side skirt into something with 2 legs? Personally, I love trousers, but I have been a little intimidated by drafting them, so let us face that fear together. The linen I am using is a favorite soft twill weave on the heavier side. I know drawing thread is usually reserved for plain woven fabrics, but this linen is cooperative enough that we can manage even with the twill. Drawing thread is just such a great historical hack for ensuring straight lines to cut after, especially for very slippery fabrics like linen, or if you don't have a pattern in the weave to cut after, like a herringbone or stripy weave. We are, of course, not forgetting the pockets. This is an offcut of a linen curtain that was too long, and as such, an excellent larger scrap piece for things like this. With a clean and freshly oiled machine, we can move on to our very necessary pockets. My favorite when it comes to stitching these up on machine have to be French seams. Just stitch your fabric right sides out, turn inside out, and press your seam all the way out into the edge and stitch again, completely encasing that raw edge. To our pocket friend, because of the open side seams for adjustability, I am adding a placket to one side. My ridiculously oversized spool of thread here is linen, which is really nice and strong, but also frays like nothing else unless we give it a hand with a little bit of beeswax first. I know I was just using the sewing machine, but pockets really benefit from getting your stitches all the way into the corners. This is something I find much easier with a needle and thread. Plus, I just never miss an opportunity to stitch the day away quietly. Back stitches are my stitch of choice for pockets, and really anything that sees frequent use. They are slow, but marvelously strong. Once we have stitched up one side, I am snipping into the seam allowance on the other side, just so we can fold our placket double and carefully tuck one side of our pocket inside, before we stitch up that too. Did I mention that we have been having some excellent summer storms lately? Because listen to this. Anyway, pocket plackets are stitched, both of them, and just like sleeves, our little friends must be mirror images, not identical. To the other side of our pocket opening, we attach our back side piece, which is also backstitched firmly in place to ensure they don't get up to any frivolous shenanigans. Pockets well in hand, we can move on to stitching up our trouser legs on either side. I am doing this with my seam allowances at a slight offset, so it will be easy to fold down the seam allowances later. This is also where we, quite essentially, do not stitch all the way up the outseam, but just a bit past the placket we have just spent so long carefully inserting. Next up, I am going over all those long seams we just stitched and felling them down by hand with a hemming stitch. Several of my long seams were cut on the selvage, which is why it has this little red line here, so I only fold it once, but everything else gets a double fold. As always, our resident quality manager makes sure everything is up to par. The outseam with the pocket requires a little extra attention and clipping into seam allowances, but it all works out. Before stitching up that last seam connecting our two trouser legs together. This time with plenty of seam allowance that can be folded down on either side for a less bulky seam all around. Or at least that was the intention. Alright, side quest time. Our pants will need some closures. I am thinking for the back panel that we could do some ties, but that might be a bit bulky, so I am doing a pair of D-rings instead. These are carefully secured to a small length of linen tape. With our side quest finished, we find the path unobstructed once more. Felling down of seams may commence. Seams successfully felled, we can move on to the back waistband, where I completely forget to add a rather necessary feature to my simple design. But as I am still blissful to this fact, continue stitching, folding and pinning as if nothing at all is amiss. For some reason, I thought I needed more than half a yard of linen tape for the counterpoint to my D-rings, which is certainly a choice. But at least we anchor everything in nicely before stitching up the backside of our waistband by hand. The front waistband is a repeat of the back, sans D-rings and linen tape. But I do get a start on the closures with a button on either side. These came from an old lab coat so tattered and frayed that my high school chemistry teacher gifted it to me. And now, the only raw seams left to address are the hems on either leg. A task I could not possibly undertake without some very necessary supervision first. You know what? These trousers are very clearly for the summery and warm weather side of the year, so I think we could all benefit from being a little bit extra and adding some cheerful and appropriate colors. This old box of embroidery floss was yet another gift from a good friend, and I'm always just crossing my fingers that it will have the colors that I want. So far, it has not disappointed. Since our button is on the inside for this one, I have some stitches visible to the outside that we could pull attention away from with some simple flowers. I am sticking to the same theme with my buttonholes on the back waistband. 6 in total on either side, all in different color of the rainbow. I can see how people have started calling happy and cheerful clothes serotonin dressing. It is certainly bringing me joy just looking at it. And with that, we are finished. Or at least so I thought. It was at this point that I realized I had completely forgotten to add pleats to our trousers before attaching the waistband, to help with that transition between hips and waist. As a result, they are quite a bit too large at this point. To fix it, because I didn't want to unpick any of the closures, I instead unpicked the waistband at the center back, well away from the buttonholes. After cutting our waistband in half, I add a box pleat to either side. I could have cut off the excess waistband, but what if I would like to expand the waistband at a later date? I'll just fold it into the waistband and reattach everything nicely. You may think this was a really devastating discovery, and of course it is never fun to realize that you made a mistake, but honestly, this is one of the things that I really like about sewing and learning how things are made. Once you understand the basics of it, you are able to see how a thing is constructed and, if necessary, take steps to fix or change it to your preference. I think that's fantastic. But with that, our whimsical summer trousers are at last complete. Loose, linen, adjustable. Just plain everything you want when the weather is hot and toasty and alternatives are required. These certainly will not be the last pair of trousers I make an attempt at. They're not as scary as I thought. As always, a big thank you to my growing group of patrons, and Merry Witches Summer Vibes to you.